In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the American Muslim Hour. Thank you for your valuable comments about our program. We do our utmost to bring good programming to you. At the IRS, we've had many interfaith dialogues in the past. This is part of our effort to find peace and promote freedom and harmony amongst all people. Today we have invited Rabbi Harold Shulwise of Valley Beth Shalom on our program. Let us now listen to the valuable comments of the Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi, for being here. I always enjoy meeting with you and talking to you, and it's nice of you to come by. The situation in the Middle East, it's really gotten as ugly as it can, don't you think?
I think it's as close as you can get to a global Holocaust. If you examine the mounting poisons of rhetoric and the deprecation of religions, blood libels, all kinds of things that are happening. This is the most serious aspect, seems to me, of certainly what will be our 21st century. Mm-hmm. And I would have thought and had hoped that the 20th century was the worst in the history of civilization. And we have to do something to overcome what, to my mind, appears to be the most dreadful kind of destruction and vilification of faiths, a great faith like Islam and of Christianity and of Judaism that are all implicated in this, because we don't have a great reputation, religions, in the world.
Yes.
And we owe the world something more than crusades and inquisitions and pogroms and torture and wars.
Especially the three of the Abrahamic traditions, as you're pointing out. Isn't it really, up till now, the 21st century you mentioned, isn't it really sad that we haven't dwelt enough on the commonality or on the shared common ground that these three faiths have?
Well, I'm a student of Maimonides, who lived, as you know, in the 12th century, and I know how much he depended upon Arab culture, how much he depended on Al-Ghazali and Al-Farabi and Avicenna and Averroes, and these were the intellectual lights that find their impact upon Jewish thought, Jewish philosophy in the Middle Ages. But as I say to the congregation constantly, we are truly brothers in the most serious sense of the word.
Yes.
When I was at the mosque, at King Fahd Mosque, I believe it was the Imam who spoke about Adam as one of the first prophets, I believe. And I remembered that Adam was not a Jew, and he wasn't a Christian, and he wasn't a Islamic individual.
Right.
He was the archetype of the human being who was created in the image of God.
Right.
That is what all of us share, and that is what I want to reach out to, an imperative, and to discover in the other that image of God.
Yes, and I think isn't this sort of imminent? It's becoming more and more compelling, because on one hand we are talking of globalization of culture, homogenization of thought processes, and yet we keep the divide, we keep the walls standing erect. And what should be the role of the faith community? What should be the religious leadership? Especially, I think, if any sense of understanding will come, my own belief is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, should come from here, from the United States.
It should come from here, and it should come from us.
Yes.
It should come from the clergy of all faiths. We have so much in common. We have to fight against many things. Number one, we have to fight against cynicism. It's a terrible cynicism that has crept hold of civilization. suspect thy neighbor as thyself. And we have to overcome that. And we overcome it, frankly, by programs such as this. I'm very moved by the fact that you've invited me. And I remember saying to you, Dr. Kaja, are there any strings attached? And you said none whatsoever. That's remarkable. That's an openness that can only bring dignity to the name of the one that's created all of us, and dignity to Islam. The question that you originally asked really concerns me a lot. We are not generals. We are not diplomats. We are not politicians. But we are men of the spirit. And it seems to me that we have tremendous opportunities to create an atmosphere that will enable peace eventually to prevail. Sooner or later, there will be peace, whether by attrition or exhaustion or by external imposition, there will be peace. And at that particular point, people will have to learn how to live together. Wounds will have to be healed, and hatreds will have to be extirpated. And that is our duty. It is what in the book of Proverbs, in the Bible, says, you prepare the heart of man, because that is what we are able to do. So it seems to me what clergy have to do, from every mosque and every church and every synagogue, is to constantly remind people of the prophet. And every religion, I know this is true of Islam most assuredly, and of my own tradition, and of Christianity, speaks of the prophet who was able to keep in front of the community a great vision. I'm going to quote one particular section. The 19th chapter of the prophet Isaiah, at a moment of great crisis, said, "Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my possession." That's the way to think. This world was not created only for Judaism. It was not created only for Christianity. It was not created only for Islam. There are many doors to God. And it seems to me that you have a great deal to teach and to learn from each other. And it can only bring dignity to the tradition of religion that has been shamed. Because I must say that God has been shamed by what is going on now. I had a teacher of mine called Abraham Joshua Heschel. He was a great teacher and philosopher. And he once wrote a very interesting article called Depth Theology. And what he asked was, what is it that happens to create theology? Before theology, before dogma, before doctrine. And he said, very movingly, that there is a pre-theological world. We don't have the same language. We don't have the same dogmas or doctrines, but we have the same tears. We have the same fears. And I know when I watch the funerals are different. There are different drapes over it, but the crying of the widows and the forlornness of the orphans is the same. And I know, if you ask me about my people, there's not a single day, not a single prayer, we pray 3 times a day. There's not a single prayer, a service, which does not include, above all else, a prayer for peace. This is indispensable. This is what is necessary to do. So while you and I cannot, I think, settle the issue of borders or territories, there is something beyond the borders and beyond the territories. And that is that our people must not be allowed to succumb to the notion of the dismissal of the other as of no importance. You are holy in my eyes. I am taught that. You are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. You know that the Catholic and Jewish relations were not great until Vatican II. There was a lot of hostility between Catholicism and Judaism. And I was a rabbi ordained right around the period of time when Vatican II came out. And I must tell you that I have never in my life expected or seen such a transformation of attitude.
Right.
There was a time when no Catholic would enter into the synagogue without the dispensation from the bishop. But after 1964 or so, with John the 23rd,
or something like that.
after that,
Yes.
it is amazing, that relationship. That gives me a lot of hope. I mean, I am convinced that, first of all, peace is going to come, that we must not succumb to the notion that war is inevitable. We must not succumb to one notion which I think has hurt all of us, and that is a monolithic notion, that all Muslims think the same way, that all Jews think the same way, that all Christians they don't. And once you recognize the gift of pluralism, this is something wonderful.
Yeah.
I remember reading in the Quran a surah that says if Allah had wanted all people, all humankind to be one people, he would have done so. But he had not done so.
Yes.
And I was moved by that. That's a blessing of pluralism,
Yes.
of unity in diversity, and that's his will.
Yes.
And in that Quran, I remember that it is written in the surah that
Indeed, we made you into nations and tribes so
Exactly.
that you would understand or recognize the differences amongst each other, and really not take it to declare war on each other. I mean, I'm paraphrasing that.
well, that's correct. Religion must not be coerced, Muhammad wrote.
Yes.
And had it written in the Quran.
Yes.
And that is, it seems to me, now there are other passages that people will not like. There are also passages in the Hebrew Scriptures that people won't like, and in the New Testament that people don't like. But what do? We who are contemporary men, we realize the situation. We have to lift up from the sacred texts those particular texts that speak to harmony and to love and to cooperation. That's what's demanded of us as spiritual leaders. If not, we will be guilty
Yes.
of simply of a terrible, blasphemous silence.
Yes, I think we would be going against the teaching of our own faith.
I'm convinced of that.
Rabbi, it seems to me that in denying each other our rights, we all seem to go back to the scriptures and quote from there or stake a claim from there. If you want to sort of cover that area, because now the Quran, for instance, a number of verses are cited or are used by those who have created the kind of chaos we are saying, and I will comment on that. But from the perspective of the Old Testament, how does one engage constructively with the scriptures?
Well, I can only talk to you in terms of my own tradition. There's an expression that's popularly used called "the devil can quote scriptures."
Yes.
And if he knew more, he would quote more Talmud and other sources as well. There is no such thing as an immaculate perception. People see movies, theater, read a book, and get away with different interpretations. It seems to me that our appeal to those people who are going to look into the text to find that which speaks to the heart of our times. And we are able to handle it in our tradition, and I'm sure you have, I know that you have it as well, in the Hadith and the Sharia, a whole host of commentaries and interpretation, so that some Jews, some Jewish people read the Bible very literally, as if every single word is to be understood literally, without understanding poetry, without understanding symbolism, without understanding
The metaphor.
The metaphor,
Right.
precisely. And once you do that, you can go back into that text and squeeze out of it that particular poetry that speaks to our situation. I give you one illustration. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now that's found in the Hebrew Scriptures. And people say that's terribly cruel. Now I must say, if you just read the Bible without commentary, you will end with that kind of lex talionis, a kind of law of retaliation. But the commentaries in the Talmud say this cannot be understood literally. For example, they say almost humorously, if I knock out your tooth, and you have to knock out my tooth, and supposing I have no teeth, are you going to touch my gums? That would not be fair. So clearly it doesn't mean a tooth for a tooth. It does mean a tooth for a tooth and not a life for a tooth. And then the rabbis went on to explain that there is monetary compensation, that there is unemployment insurance, that there is payment for the embarrassment and for the pain, monetary compensation. Now that's the way in which the rabbis freed themselves from a literal, very narrow interpretation. And this, it seems to me, from what I know about Maimonides, and through Maimonides, the Arab philosophers, who themselves, as you know, were the ones who are responsible for translating all the Greek philosophers, Aristotle and Plato, into a language which entered into the European world. Without that, there would be no culture of Athens. So this is the way in which it seems to me ought to proceed. And I think that tradition grows, and I believe that we are going to become more sophisticated, more learned, more pious, more close to the intention of the Bible by emphasizing those particular ideas that speak to the heart. Have you met anybody who doesn't want to have peace? There are some people like that. This Pope, John Paul, recently put a statement out in which he says there are undoubtedly injustices. But he added, there is no excuse for terrorism, no matter what the injustice. This I believe. I think there is no excuse for suicides that lead to murder, and we are people of genocides. Both of us, by the way, have a long history of a lot of mischief. The Crusades was no bowl of cherries for Jews as well as for Muslims. And this commonality ought to bring us closer together. So it breaks my heart to see this division between, what you say correctly, two faiths of tremendous exhilaration and attachment to this revolutionary idea of the oneness of God.